My name is Amanda.
And I'm Kristin.
And we are the Exorcisters. So sit back, relax, and let's get pleasantly surprised creepy. Welcome to Hype episode 17. And in this episode, we are going to dive in. Actually, probably not even scratch the surface on Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to... There's some good stuff in there where, like, I didn't read the book and you did. Mm-hmm. And so it was all new to me.
Yeah. Honestly, there was stuff that was new to me because they didn't go by the book on everything.
That's true. We saw this. It gained a one-night limited release on October 30th. Mm-hmm. So that's how we're able to review it and drop it. So it actually comes out in theaters today, November 8th. So I actually highly recommend seeing this.
Absolutely. There's some slow spots, so prepare for that. But other than that, overall.
Yeah. In the pacing, things that were slow weren't... for me, I was so wrapped up in the story, maybe because I was still getting to know these characters, whereas you kind of already knew them a little bit, point. You know? Yeah. Because they have a lot to introduce. So first of all, if you're a Shining fan, or even if you're not, I think you should give this movie a chance, because as a fan of The Shining, it's really scary. I think being a fan of any sort of iconic film that is, 30, 40, 50 years, when a sequel takes that long to make, decades to make, which The Shining came out in 1980, it's always scary. Mm-hmm. Because, yes, this was based on Dr. Sleep, written by Stephen King. But a lot of people loved The Shining without even reading the book, and they're so different. Yeah. So it's always scary when a sequel is made on anything that you love, but especially on these older classic movies that are so iconic. And so it's like, oh, what if they ruin a character for me? Because they could have easily screwed up Danny or Wendy. Mm-hmm. Or, Jack's already like an axe murdering dad. But you get more context. They could have changed his character significantly too. And it didn't really change much as far as The Shining goes, except for the fact that you got a little bit more understanding of why The Shining happened, which we did talk a little bit about in our Shining episode. But you had to explain to me some of the background things in the book that you don't get in the movie of why this is happening.
Right. There's not as much of that I saw, which was cool. They kind of gave you the stuff you needed to know you knew. Exactly. Which was good. There's some stuff, there's a couple characters that die in the movie that don't in the book. Reading the book, it's actually not very much of a horror novel. You'd be really surprised. It's very uplifting. Nobody really dies except for one elderly lady who is in her 90s. And that's going to happen.
Didn't really have a part at all in the movie.
Yeah, she had a really big part in the book, but that was like the only death. So there's some people that you end up caring about that they die. That does not happen in the book. And then the ending is completely different. And once again, way fucking better than what Stephen King wrote.
I was about to say, in true Stephen King fashion.
Way better.
Which he actually really, from what I've read and I've seen his tweets and things, he really, really liked Dr. Sleep. Mm-hmm. And as somebody that didn't read the book, I was pretty into it the whole time. I will agree with you on there were some slower paced scenes because they're cramming, and it's a 2.5-hour movie. Mm-hmm. It's a long movie, but they are still trying to cram a ton of information, but they also have to kind of give you, well, let's not assume that everyone in this theater has seen The Shining. So what background information do we have to give them in order to understand this movie? I don't think there are a ton of people that would go into Dr. Sleep not having seen The Shining. But what if your significant other really liked The Shining and takes you to see Dr. Sleep? And they have to cater to those audiences too. Mm-hmm. So you get a lot of backstory, but I didn't feel like, it's not like they did a whole recap of The Shining.
No, and the bits that they did blew me away with how well they did them. Yeah. They were perfect.
It starts, and I'm not going to spoil it completely, but if you want to avoid some of the little spoilers we're going to throw in here and there, because we are going to have a discussion about it, you might not want to listen, especially since it is release day. Mm-hmm. But they started off with Wendy and Danny right after. Mm-hmm. they leave the Overlook and they've moved to Florida. And Danny says later that it's because they never wanted to fucking see snow again. And it kind of brings you back into where they are. And so they have another actress portraying Wendy. Yeah. And she does a pretty good job.
She does amazing. Like, how she talked was the same.
She yelled Danny's name, and it was like, I was like, oh, that's a soundbite from The Shining.
Yeah,
and it wasn't.
It wasn't. She just did that good of a fucking job.
And they have an actor that do come in and do some of the Jack Nicholson work and Jack Torrance work, which, you know, you would think would be a little off-putting. And I'm not going to lie, like, it's a little bit jarring, but not in a way that I was, like, upset about it. It was in a way that I'm like, okay, they're doing the best they can, because it's not like you can bring Jack Nicholson back and even age him down. You know?
I would rather them do this because they did an amazing job than do shitty CGI, which I've seen. Actually, I just recently got to see Terminator, the new one also, and that had shit CGI. So if they did that, I'd rather not. Let's just have somebody who sounds amazingly like it and is pretty close.
And then they did look very, very close. They even recreated the scene where Jack is, you know, the iconic bathroom scene. And I thought that they would just put a clip of The Shining, but they didn't. They had her do it.
Yeah, they did the whole thing. It was great.
Yeah, we were talking about how much those actors probably had to how many hours did they spend just watching and observing?
That scene over and over and over
because
again.
They had to, I mean, and how much pressure that has to be to try to recreate performances by Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson in their most iconic film. I know Jack Nicholson has a lot of iconic films, but this one, I mean, and you got to recreate scenes that Kubrick did.
Yes.
So, like, that's a ton of pressure. And I think they lived up to it well. I mean, we left this theater and we didn't really talk much until we got in the car because it was like 2 degrees and we were going to die. But we were both like, so I wasn't sure if you were going to like it or not. But then we were both, oh my God, I loved it.
Yeah. Like, the only problems I have is the characters that you love that don't die in the book and then you kill them in the movie. And I'm like, that was lame. But that was the only problem I had.
It does a lot of good character work, too. Like, you really see... I was afraid that Danny was going to be this sad, pathetic alcoholic because you know he's struggling with alcoholism from the trailers and just, like, the hype around it. And they don't dwell on that. You get to see a lot of... In the 2.5 hours that you're watching this movie, you get to see a lot of Danny growing as a person and as a character. And even in the movie, they encompass 8 years. So you get to see a lot of that progression, and it really starts talking more about what the Shine is and all of these different forces, because like we talked about in The Shining, so this really isn't a spoiler if you've listened to the Shining episode that we did. The hotel is an entity in itself that is, and obviously you have the ghosts and everything, so that's an obvious point in The Shining, but what's a little nuancy and more in the book, like you said, those internal dialogues is how much of an entity the hotel itself truly is, and not just these separate people that have died in it.
Right.
And we get to go back to the Overlook in this movie, and again, that can be scary, but as a Shining and a Kubrick fan and just a Stephen King fan, I mean, it was just... When they went back, they did a lot of those ode to shots and the music. Which was great. And then he woke up the Overlook, and you see the Overlook in a completely different light than you see it in the first one. And it starts to put a lot of pieces together that you may not have had during The Shining, which was really cool to see.
Yeah, it was really cool. And then, I mean, it's not really scary, but when you get to the ghosts, that stuff can be pretty fucking creepy. Yeah. That was pretty good.
I mean, they brought back the old naked woman, and she looked just like the one from the 1980 film.
They show her in tons of different bathrooms being creepy. And...
Yeah, she was spooky as fuck. And it was really cool. Dr. Sleep is because Danny works in hospice. And that's he
helps them go to sleep to pass.
Exactly.
Which is awesome. This whole movie is just about death and not to fear it.
Right.
Because your villain, that's all they do is fear death. They don't ever want to die. So, of course, you don't want to be the villain. You want to be these elderly people who Danny's helping pass on.
Right. And it was actually, there were a couple scenes that I actually teared up. And it wasn't something where I was crying to where you even notice, but just the theme of death and hospice and people in pain, especially seeing someone die from cancer and that treatment, it hits pretty hard. But this movie did a really wonderful job at being sensitive to that, and for it just to be literally he's putting them to sleep, and that's that, and they want to go. They're like, Dr. Sleep.
Well, they're moving on to the next stage, is what this is all about. Yeah. Is that it doesn't end, it keeps going, and he's just helping them transfer.
Yeah. And there's also a little girl that they bring into this, which you see a little bit of her in the trailer. She's a fucking badass. Mm-hmm. She's a really cool character. And the performance and the things that she had to do being like a 12-year-old actress. Mm-hmm. Holy crap. None of the performances in this movie ever made you go, oh my God, this is a movie. If that makes sense.
These performances were great.
Like, they were very much in the moment with them.
Especially the True Knot, our villains. Mm-hmm. There are two that were freaking amazing. Rosie the Hat, she's the main villain. She was fucking amazing.
The creepy bitch you see with her eyes all lit up in the trailers.
Yes. Yeah. First of all, she's beautiful. But also, she did such a good job. I was hooked in every scene she did. And then her male counterpart was Crow Daddy. And I was really freaking happy because Crow Daddy is actually, like, in real life, the guy who played him, Zan McLarnon. He was born in Denver, Colorado, which is cool because that's close to us. Right. But also, he is half Irish and half Lakota. So the fact that we have a Native American person that is in such a big budget movie, I'm going to shout that to the rooftops. That's amazing.
Right. And like you said, they both did a great job to the point where you do feel, or at least I did. And I will say, too, I think a part of the reason we were able to get so entrenched in this movie is because we had the early release crowd that was excited about it. The theater was dead fucking silent the whole time, which I'm super appreciative of. But when they were in these scenes, when our villains are coming to the forefront and you're starting to figure out what they're doing and how scary they are, and when they start to get involved with our protagonists and that whole cat and mouse thing happens, it really does build a lot of good suspense. There are certain scenes that happen and you're like, you really get emotionally invested, even in things that aren't main characters. If they have to do with our main characters at all, if they're loved ones or friends or family, because you care about the main characters so much, you give a shit about everything having to do with them. And they just did such a great job, I think, with casting. The director did an incredible job. I thought the editing was beautiful.
The cinematography.
The sound mixing
was
oh my God.
Great. It's not Kubrick, but God, did they get close. They did a damn good job.
You could tell that the fan service to the people that loved The Shining, I thought was really good because...
And it wasn't overboard.
No, it wasn't like a total, like...
We want you to come because you like The Shining.
They weren't patronizing me.
Exactly.
And they also gave me some, like, even just in the trailers, I mean, how many times did I just look at you with, like,
because of the sound,
the Shining theme? When they would do that in the trailer, I'd look at you and I'd be like, oh my God, because I'd have chills because it's just such a heavy, iconic, puts you really in a moment sound. And they did the Shining theme on the way back, and they got the same shots that they did of the Overlook, but they remixed the song a little bit, and the shots were just a little bit different, darker. It wasn't in the daytime coming in on the sweeping lake, but they still did the sweeping lake. It was just in its own right, and so this movie was its own movie, and it didn't have to rely on The Shining to be a good movie.
Yeah, you are correct.
Which is awesome, because they could have easily just been like, it's a sequel to The Shining, and it been a piece of shit that would have made $500 million easy, you know.
There are a couple things I noticed that I wanted to lean over and talk to you about, but I didn't. So one of them, did you notice that her house number was 1980?
I did. Yes, yes.
And then the other one was Danny goes into a room and he's basically not in an interview, but he's talking to a doctor, and the doctor's behind the desk, like you would in an interview.
Yeah.
And it is the same exact room that Jack Nicholson does his interview to go to the Overlook. Same room.
And that's
same
the
color.
kind of shit that I just live for. I did notice the 1980 on there were a few things I picked up that I was like, that's intentional. But some of it I was like, I don't know if that's intentional. Like maybe Elm Street is just something we use for everything. But maybe that was an ode to another 80s horror flick or, you know. But I didn't notice I know that they set the scene similarly, but I didn't notice like the color and the
same room,
intricacies
same color
there.
And all that. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the commercials that they had in the beginning of this movie were just freaking insane. So the first thing we had was the Kellogg's Tiger, Tony the Tiger, and he's telling us that they're cutting sports in schools. And it's a huge fucking deal. I'm not saying it's not a huge fucking deal. Kids should have sports. But they've been cutting art programs for how fucking long, and now we're going to throw a fit
and music
about
programs.
Sports?
Yeah.
Seriously? I
mean, I'm from Texas, so they never cut sports. So I can only attest for that. They always cut the band program, which I was in.
Art
and the
always
choir.
gets cut before sports does. Yeah. I'm so sorry that maybe, like, yes, something should happen if schools have to cut all programs, but I'm so fucking sorry sports are getting it for once.
Yeah.
Fucking A.
It's also really annoying that this is just like a little complaint about just being in movies. I'm fine with trailers, but the ad reels at the beginning of before the trailers, like when I want to go, okay, let's say like there was only one showing for this on one night. It was 7:00 on the 30th. Well, the movie doesn't fucking start till 7:30, and it's a 2.5-hour movie.
Yeah, this is a Stephen King movie that's not short.
No, it's a whole thing. Can we just start the movie at 7, please?
Yeah.
I'll still show up 30 minutes early for the trailers.
Exactly.
Like, can we get this movie started at 7? Because it was really long. And I was like looking up at the screen for so long. When we walked out, I was like, oh my God, my fucking neck hurts so bad. Worth it though.
Then we had a second commercial though, which was even worse. Sorry, you've ruined it. I'll never buy a Honda. Ever buy a fucking Honda.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember?
I do.
It was like insane. So basically, they're talking about how much they love this guy, and he's a great father, he's a great husband, he's a great best friend. And then all of a sudden, what would I do if he wasn't around? And then you see him walking across the street, and there's a car that almost hits him, and then everyone's crying and they're sad. And I'm like, what the fuck? But then he didn't actually die because someone has great brakes on their Honda. I will never buy a Honda now. You just made it a horrible fucking thing.
It was a Hyundai.
It was a
Never
Hyundai.
buy a Hyundai.
Okay,
yep.
Hyundai.
That's how I remember.
Ever.
It's about remember like when we did the ethos and the pathos in English class?
Exactly.
Yeah, they really pulled on one of those.
They went too fucking far on pulling though.
Don't put it in front of a 2.5-hour movie that's already going to be emotional.
Yeah, right? We're already starting this off great. I'm sad that kids don't have sports and you're going to die in a car crash, so that's cool.
This is like a side rant, but I was already having a real bad day before we got to the movie theater. And I told her, I was like, if there's anything sad in this, I'm gonna cry.
So like our first commercial.
And like the fucking commercial, I was like, fuck. But then I was actually pleasantly surprised by the movie, and I went home very uplifted because even though it's a lot about death, they, like you said, they don't make death the scary thing. In a lot of horror movies, death is the scary thing.
No.
In this one, I mean,
death is where we're all going.
Death is the only our bad guys are afraid of it. Everyone else is like, okay, we're gonna die.
Right.
Cool. Whatever. Like,
and they move on like they're supposed to.
Yeah.
It's a very natural thing. You're not supposed to avoid it like them.
Right. So I really enjoyed this movie, and like I said, didn't want to do a full walkthrough because this is release day, and like you just go see it. Like I said, 2.5-hour movie, so you're gonna invest a lot of time into this movie. I would go like early on a Sunday, like we do. That's usually when we go, because you have the rest of your day at least, and you don't feel like you were just in a theater all night. Like, you know, it was a late night. But if you can handle that. But I will definitely. It's funny because we saw it on the 30th and it didn't drop until today, so there was significant time between, and I kept wanting to go to my friends that hadn't seen it. I'll go see Dr. Sleep with you. Let's go. And I'm like,
I kept thinking that too.
It's not out yet.
Exactly. Or I'd try to pull up pictures on my phone to show people scenes, and I'm like, oh wait, that's not there yet.
Not out yet. So now that it's out, I'm excited because I want Brad to see it. Like I wasn't sure if he would like it, but now that I've seen it, I'm like excited, and I've got some friends. I'm like, I may see this movie like 3 or 4 times before it's out of theaters because I just really enjoyed it that much. And I think that it will have stuff to offer even after seeing it several times. So I was really impressed. This is one of my favorite movies we've seen this year.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was
it's
a good
up
one.
there for me.
Better than It Part 2.
It's way better than It Part 2, which is so good because you had a sequel coming out for a movie that I really, really loved, and then you had a sequel coming out for another movie I really, really loved, and I got 50%. I mean, honestly, if I had to pick if whether It Chapter 2 was good or this was good, I probably still would have gone with Dr. Sleep. Because you're going to insult something from the 1980s that everyone loves and cherishes, or a movie from 2017 that was already a remake. So, or I guess the TV one, but you know what I mean. So, no, I'm super happy with this. It gets a 5 out of 5 for me.
Yeah, I'm not quite as happy as that. Yeah. I saved my 5s for other ones that I was just walking out smiling ear to ear, but this one was great. 4 out of 5.
Yeah.
Solid movie.
Yeah.
Good job.
You should go see it. Let us know what you think. If there was anything you didn't like about it that pertained to The Shining, or if you're not really a Shining fan, you liked it or didn't like it, just let us know what you think. You can hang out with us on all of our socials at The Exorcisters Podcast. On Twitter, we are at The Exorcisters. And again, you can always email us at theexorcisters@gmail.com.
Until next time, stay creepy.